of questions. There's lots of things that we have to accomplish and do. So it's just the tasks are different. I think that's the main thing.
Can I follow up just real quick, just maybe it's obvious, but I feel like that's what this is for. I know Kellen was asked a couple of times during the year. Tyler Shuck is your quarterback in 2026. There's not going to be a competition. You all are comfortable going forward with that?
Yeah, we feel great with Tyler. Tyler's done an awesome job through this entire process. He's gotten a ton better. He's taken advantage of a bunch of opportunities. We're excited to have a full offseason to build. I thought what Spencer did in the season also is worth commending. What he put out there on film, I think, is really good film. He's a really good quarterback. He's a starting caliber quarterback as well. And so I feel like that quarterback room has, the depth and obviously the talent to be really successable.
Nick, what has been the most surprising thing to you about Tyler Shuck's rookie year success?
I don't know that there's anything surprising for us. I mean, we thought a lot of him going into the draft, and collectively, I'm talking about our personnel staff, our coaches. So we felt like, man, this guy's got a chance to be a real good quarterback in the league, and that's why we drafted him. So I think. Probably progressed a little faster than maybe we expected. But I think our coaches, did a great job with him. I think our players embraced his opportunity, and obviously the player himself embraced his opportunity.
Is there a balance to strike between having like a young team, a young core, but also like an extremely winnable division? Like, how do you like fall on those things between like building the young core versus like you can win the NFC South possibly, next year?
Yeah. Well, I think all of us, every guy with every team, whether it's a coach or GM, thinks, they have a vision for how they can win their division, regardless of how strong or weak, you may think it is. So we're going to approach it the same way. Hey, how do we improve enough to win the division? And we don't want to just win the division. I mean, we don't want to, be an 8-8 or 8-9 winning team in a division. We want to win the division, be dominant, and have a chance to make a run in the playoffs. So that's what our goal is going to be.
Do you worry about like having everybody on the same timeline, or is there like a possible mix of having some older guys on one-year deals versus acquiring 27-year-olds?
Well, I think every team has that, regardless of whether you plan for it or not. You're going to have that circumstance because you need and want some veteran players in your building. But we do talk about, hey, the core players on your team and what's their timeline in terms of contracts and how do we manage it. So we do have discussions about it.
Maybe without knowing like your full history, I mean, it's been at least a very, very long time since you're like building around a rookie contract at quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Like what sort of advantages does that give you from your perspective and just roster building?
Yeah, it's just easier to manage your resources. I don't know if it's easy. I don't know if easier is the right word, but you have some leeway to manage resources a little bit, and so, but you still have to make really good decisions, and I think it's pretty well documented that teams that have a quarterback on a rookie deal have been able to do some things and have some success, and so part of that is just building your roster and managing it over, the 2, 3, 4 year period that you're facing, and it's just a different equation. It's a different math equation, really.
And we've talked just a lot in recent years about you wanting to get the cap kind of back toward neutral, I guess, is the right way to put it. Do you feel you're almost there on that? Do you feel there?
I feel pretty good about it. Yes, I do feel good about where we're at.
Maybe along these team building lines, I mean, we've had this session so many years in the past where you don't like the word rebuilding or like the complete teardown or whatever. Did you adjust like your willingness to embrace that? I mean, there were obviously some signs trading Rashid Shaheed, trading for Jalen Polk, all the rookies who played and stuff. Did you find yourself even leaning more into that than you expected?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I would say that's true.
And what led to it, and what did you like about it, I guess, as you were going through it?
Yeah, I think the beginning of that was just Derek not being able to play this year. That's the beginning of it, and then you look at, okay, we're going to have a young quarterback, and there's going to be a lot of development. And so how can we develop the rest of the team along with his development so that, we marry this timeline of his improvement and the things that we're going to need to be able to do to support him, with a really good defense, with, a good run game. And so those are the kinds of things you keep in mind.
And then Kellen, along those lines, Kellen, was it always your coaching philosophy to play guys like Quincy Riley and Danny Stutzman and Jonas Sanker as early as you did, or did that come from conversations about, hey, this looks like the direction of this team right now?
I think the important thing about that is that those guys were ready when the opportunity presented themselves, and no timelines are going to be the same. Felt like Tyler's development was a great example of that, of his willingness to get better through an entire season. Quincy kind of had an opportunity through injury to hop in there. Danny kind of was a guy that I think is a great example of just being a really talented player that we feel great about and find different roles and different opportunities where he can get on the field. And so a lot of these timelines were different, but I think it was important to see these guys play and have exposure, and I thought a lot of these guys took advantage of the opportunity.
How would you all evaluate? Surprised at all by Tyler's development? Did any part of it, sort of wow you a little bit during the course of this last 8 weeks or so?
Yeah, I think there's some flashes there that you just, whoa, that's really good. But I don't think surprise is the right word because, you have expectations when you draft somebody in the second round or first round, and because you value the talent and you have a vision for that player or those players being successful, and so I don't think surprise is the right word, but obviously pleased.
How did his development over the course of the season, either change your outlook on what this team could be, or how you maybe want to pivot to go this offseason? Did it have an impact at all?
That's a good question. I don't know that we've determined that. That's part of this postseason process that we're going to go through, evaluating the roster, determining what we need to do in this offseason. Obviously, we feel good about the quarterback position.
How
much did you see Kellen just grow as a coach this season?
I'm sorry, say that again?
How much did you see Kellen just kind of grow as a coach?
I haven't thought about it in that term, but listen, I think he's done an excellent job, and under some really difficult circumstances. We hired Kellen under a set of circumstances relative to the quarterback, and then that changed dramatically. And man, he didn't bat an eye. Just okay, what's the next step that we have to do, and how do we attack it? And that was impressive right from the beginning. And then during the course of the season, obviously there's circumstances and things that come up during the course of the year that you can think you're prepared for, but you're really not because you haven't been put in that position. And I think in virtually every case, he handled it really well, and so that's been exciting to see.
How do you handle the situation? You're going to obviously have a situation coming up with some legendary veteran players in Cam and DeMario and even Taysom. Have you thought about how you'll handle that, what their futures could be, letting them test free agency, or maybe what the plan could be?
Yeah, I think, and it's not just specific to those guys, but there's a process that we go through at the end of the season. It's an evaluation, and then it's a determination of, hey, do they want to come back? Do we want them back? And then even that, there's still, okay, there's a lot of variables, What's the contract situation? What's the timeline? There's just too many variables for me to give you a definitive answer on any of that. But look, I'm excited to hear when those guys declare they want to be back here, and I would say on the surface we definitely want to have them back. But there's just so many other variables that exist that I can't really answer that question right now.
Kellen, is there anything from this season that was super instructive for you, or is there any sort of stuff that you went through this year where you kind of identified I need to change my process here or anything like that?
Oh, no question. I think that's the beauty of what we're going through right now is, Mickey's kind of alluding to this whole off-season process. It's just a really awesome opportunity to grow as a team, certainly myself individually, to just go back through the entire season, our entire process from the off-season program to how we went through the draft process, all the way leading into the season. And so there's definitely opportunities to grow, get better. I feel like credit to our guys, again, like we've said a lot, the people that we have in this building are really special. And I think that's certainly the foundation of this, from the connection between the personnel department, the coaching, everyone else that works in this building from a day-to-day process, the players, the buy-in, the connection, I think is really, really special. And so if you start there and just keep getting better, we'll be on the right path.
Yeah, but there was a lot of fluctuation related to the roster, whether it be trades or injuries. How much did that impact development of the offense at the pace you wanted to?
Say that again, sorry.
The fluctuation of the roster
Yeah.
came to injuries and trades.
Yeah.
How much did that fluctuate and maybe alter the timeline of developing the offense the way you wanted to?
I'd just say that's going to happen every single year. Injuries, adjustments to the roster, and just your ability to pivot is really important. And so certainly we feel like there's a lot of opportunities to grow, to get better collectively. And I think that's the beauty of what this offseason is going to provide us, is just a really clean platform to use last year as an excellent resource to evaluate it, dig into everything, and then find a really good path moving forward.
Kellen, do you anticipate any changes to your staff?
Well, certainly, we feel great about the staff. It's an awesome staff. Really appreciate these guys coming together. And, you always have to stay ready for different adjustments. We have a really talented staff, and so you got to be ready for the opportunities that may arise for these guys. And so we'll go through that whole process as we go through this. But it's been a really good staff.
For both of you guys, just how much did it alter the vision after Derek decided to retire? And just what was that like, kind of going through just like a complete change of plan at that time?
Well, I would say that it just catches you a little bit off guard. And so you got to kind of recalibrate, okay, what's our plan going forward? Early in the off season, it's different than it is later. And then I don't know, it's just hard, it's hard to describe really. It's a good question, but it just changes your course a little bit. That's really the best way to describe it.
The
Have you
other,
had any conversations with Derek? Do you think he could possibly play again, and how would that impact the organization? You all have the rights to this?
I mean, he's on our retired list, so no, I haven't had any conversations with him.
And then Kellen, when you navigated this first season and came in, I'm sure you had a plan to how you were going to handle some of the adversity that you did. Was it more difficult? Was it what you expected? I mean, just kind of take us through where you were at maybe a year ago and where you're at now.
I think it's something we talked about. I think that's the thing that acknowledged it going into the season. We could be in a playoff run right now. We would have already faced adversity as well. Every team faces adversity. So I think it's how you handle adversity and how you're prepared for it and having the right people. And, certainly we went through some tough stretches. We had a couple, 4-game losing streaks in there. And I think the beauty of it was the way our guys responded, the way this building operated. You would have never thought that, And certainly we've all been exposed to different buildings, different structures, maybe have had more challenges in those situations. I think the people aspect of this thing was really special. And so, when you talk about some of those leaders, their willingness to embrace some change, some adjustments, some things that maybe feel different than what they're used to. And, when those guys follow that, certainly the young guys will follow that lead.
Kellen, how much does it help you to just know that you can brainstorm around pieces that the ones that you have now are going to be there? Because I assume that changed on you last year too, that you kind of envisioning one thing and you have to adjust. Like, just knowing some stuff settled, like, does that help you just with what you're doing?
I think it's a great opportunity in the offseason to have some solidified, guys in place that certainly you can build around, and I think that's what's great. We have a season of plenty of highs and lows, a lot of good film out there, a lot of good things that we can improve on, and we get to go through this thing collectively as a group and kind of paint the picture of what this thing needs to look like moving forward. And so, coaches certainly will do a lot of that. Players will be a part of that process as we go through this, and there's a lot of excitement around that.
Mickey, how high is it on your list? Because I know you obviously have to do a whole process of evaluating what you need, what your plan is. How high is it on your list to get an extension with Chris Olave done? And are you optimistic that you guys will be able to do that?
Well, Chris is obviously an important player to us and had a really good season, but, we haven't even really spent much time thinking about that right now. I mean, we've had a couple conversations with his agent, but, that's part of that'll be, part of this offseason. I can't tell you how high it is or low it is. I don't have the whole list yet.
Kellen, are there any specific players who require long rehab this offseason? Anybody potentially missing any of the summer program or anything?
I don't think anyone that should necessarily impact training camp that was in addition to people that already had injuries prior to the during the season. Nothing on the back end of the season necessarily, but that's what NFL seasons are. There's plenty of guys that'll go through a lot of cleanups and different things through the next week or two, and those guys will go on that process. OTAs, some guys go through a little bit of a process where they're working their way back, but training camp looks like a lot of optimism that a lot of guys will be available and ready to go.
What did Taysom Hill's injury end up being in the shoulder?
Yeah, just the AC.
Can I, last year when you got hired, you singled out certain players, and Alvin was one of them.
Mhm.
Do you still have the same belief? Obviously people say, oh, a running back over 30, what's happening last year, is it more injury and circumstances? Like, do you still have the same belief in Alvin?
Yeah, I love Alvin. What Alvin's meant to this organization has been awesome. He's come in, he's put in a ton of work. Obviously, these seasons all take different paths, and he's had to navigate an injury, and so the most important thing for him is just to get healthy and be back to his self. And so he's done a really good job of leading this group and providing that leadership, and so excited for him.
What are your impressions, Mickey, overall of the rookie class, the way that Quincy stepped up, the way that Devin Benitez,
Yeah.
Sophie Willis, Tyler Shook, Kelvin Banks, and everyone included?
Yeah, I think that I think all of us would say we're pretty excited about the group as a whole. The things that they did, sometimes under different circumstances. Kelvin coming in, moving right to left tackle. He had some really good flashes during the course of the season. Obviously, there's room for improvement. Tyler, what he's done, that's been the focal point, I think, in the media about Tyler. But what Jonas Sanker and even Devin Neal coming in, Quincy, who am I missing?
Yeah.
Yeah, Danny Stutzman. I mean,
Yeah.
all these guys have really stepped up and done a great job. They've been professional about the way they've approached their craft. Even Vernon Broughton, who we didn't get a chance to see a lot of because he got hurt pretty early. I think we're excited about his prospects. Maliki at tight end, Fidel. I mean, all of them just to a man. I think we're really excited about this class and have a lot of high hopes for them going forward.
It was one of your better classes in a while. Was there anything that you identified in your process to give those players that changed from how you guys were doing things, or is it the introduction of a new coaching staff to get their input? Like, what do you think kind of led to a better hit rate on kind of the overall?
Yeah, look, we've had some really great classes, 2006, 2017 come immediately to mind, but there's been some other ones as well. So, it's gonna, you're gonna have years where, man, it seems like everyone's working out and doing well, and this is early. We shouldn't be judging our draft class after 1 year. We need to wait a few years, but we're pretty optimistic at this point. And some of that's circumstantial, like Jonas got his opportunity, Quincy got their opportunity because of injuries and circumstance, and so sometimes you have years where you have draft picks that don't get those opportunities, and so it takes a while for them to be able to perform. So, but we're excited about it. Is the bottom line.
The pressures of Chase Young's season after the contract you got him under last
Yeah.
season.
Well, my first impression is I wish he would have been able to play 17 games because I think when he came back after week 5, that really impacted our defense. And the way they performed from that point forward was pretty spectacular, I thought. And Brandon Staley and the entire coaching staff did a great job. The players bought into the scheme and the system, and just every week it felt like they got better and better, and all the way through the end of the season. So that was impressive.
Kellen, how would you describe working with Brandon Staley and the job he did, especially, like Mickey said, once Chase Young came back in the second half of the season?
Yeah, I just give a ton of credit to our defensive staff. You can see the improvement, like Mickey was saying, throughout the season. Their ability to connect. It was a staff that a lot of people from different places, and so getting together and coming together and getting alignment, I thought was critical, and I thought they just did an excellent job of that. And their adaptability, I thought they did a really good job as the season progressed. Adaptability, willingness to adjust, based off kind of matchups and personnel and all that fun stuff. But we got a bunch of really good people, and so I felt great about it.
Kellen, you talked about it multiple times before, but what has been that special factor for Kelvin that's allowed him to continue to win week in and week out?
Yeah, I think he's just really, truly at the end of the day, he's a humble, hardworking guy. He doesn't let mistakes snowball. You know, to go play left tackle in this league as a rookie, and to play as many hard downs as he's had to play against some of the premier players in this league. That's as hard as it is. That's as hard as it goes, and his willingness to just go for it, embrace it, get better each week. Tons of credit to him, and we're fired up to have him.
Chris,
Kellen,
the other day.
several players, veteran or otherwise, have kind of expressed a desire to be a part of what's being built here. What does that mean to you, and how would you go about creating sort of that environment that players want to be a part of?
Yeah, no, I certainly think it comes down to people. It comes down to having really, really good people in the building, which certainly I think from an evaluation process, we've just put a ton of emphasis in for a number of years, and that's allowed us to have the type of locker room we have. And then just the consistency of how our players, how our coaches, how everyone operates from a day-to-day basis. I think hopefully it creates an environment that allows everyone to be their best.
Mickey, was there ever a serious consideration of bringing in a veteran quarterback after Derek retired, or did you guys kind of right away feel like, let's go with the young guy?
Well, the timeline didn't fit that. You know, I think the veteran quarterbacks that you would bring in and compete for your the position were pretty much all gone.
Yeah.
By the time that all got settled out. So yeah, we had some discussions about that, but the opportunity really didn't exist.
And then part two of that is, I mean, did you leave it up to Kellen and the coaching staff, or did you guys have long discussions about the ideal timeline for Tyler and all that, or like, once you give them their roster, that's completely up to them, and then did you like the way that ended up playing out, obviously?
Are you talking about in terms
Like
of when
now
Tyler
starting
played?
at the beginning of the season,
Yeah.
coming in mid-season?
No, I mean that, who is starting, who is playing is a coach's decision. But certainly we had a lot of discussions about that during training camp, during the season, but yeah, obviously I like the way that turned out. I think it was exactly the right way to approach it, and I think Kellen and his staff did a great job of developing the position. We got, it wasn't just one young guy. We got 3 young guys in that room, and that's a difficult proposition for as a coach. And I thought they handled it perfectly.
Following up on that, is that going to be maybe a possibility for this offseason to potentially bring in, since Tyler is going to be your guy, like a veteran who's been there, done that can potentially.
It's a good question. We feel great about that room. You're always trying to raise the level of a room, try and get better, try and improve. I think one guy in that room that kind of lose sight is like Taysom was in that room the entire year. He's been in some of the best quarterback rooms in the entire NFL, and his leadership, what he brought to those guys, even when he's playing his role where he plays every other position, he brought an excellent form of leadership to those guys and experience that they were able to lean into.
Kellen, Cam DeMar have already said they want to play in 2026. Have you talked to Taysom about whether he wants to play in 2026 or retirement possibility?
We'll talk through all that process. I think for all these players, I think the goal really is, I'm just appreciative of their work. That's the most important thing. And then the offseason is the offseason for a reason. You let the emotions get away from all these seasons and all that sort of stuff, and then take some time. And we'll have plenty of discussions, with everyone.
What is kind of the timeline for y'all's sort of evaluation process this year? I know usually you kind of take a week away, and then how do you plan to do it this year?
Yeah, same. We're gonna get the next 10 days, and I think Kellen's letting his staff take the next 10 days or so. They'll come back and we'll walk through the evaluations, their evaluations of the players, and then from that we'll start generating our off-season plan.
Chris was saying that with Spencer Rattler, feels like he deserves another opportunity to start. That'd be difficult here given Tyler. Would you be open to moving him? Did he express an interest in being traded out?
No, I mean, we're not anywhere in that. We haven't had any kind of discussions about that.
Mickey, what role do you think, patience and not being overly reactionary has played in you building this thing, possibly 3 times now over the last couple of decades, just not overreacting to the noise and giving guys time to do their job and grow, and maybe not even pushing, hey, you got to get the young quarterback in there like some teams do. How much do you think that helps with building this organization?
how much does it help? I mean, I don't know that I can answer that. That's just, that's really, I probably am overly patient. Sometimes, sometimes your greatest strengths become become a weakness, and so I'm really patient, I feel like, and whether it helps or not, hopefully it does. I think it does, but I'll continue to be that way. Again, we're excited about Tyler. You're all excited about Tyler. We're excited about Tyler, but we have to remember that he hasn't had 17 starts yet, and so we're going to go into next season with these high expectations, and there's nothing wrong with that, but we also have to temper that by the fact that he's a rookie, not a rookie, he's a second-year quarterback, and he's had less than a full season to start. So we got to keep that in mind as we go forward, that there's building blocks here, and we cannot skip any steps.
I'm gonna go ahead and just follow up on that exact thing by maybe getting a little overexcited about Tyler, but
Yeah.
when you do have somebody who does have some optimism at that position,
Yeah.
is that like an attractive part and bring people to the organization? And
Yeah.
there's a lot of other things that go into that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think, for example, in free agency, and I'm not going to necessarily use Tyler as an example, but players want to go to a place where they think they can be successful, and part of that success is definitely winning. And if you have a quarterback prospect or a quarterback that you feel really good about, obviously that's attractive. It's attractive for coaches. It's attractive for players as well, and helps you in that free agency process. That happened for us, with Drew, and it happened really right after we got him. And then obviously as the years went on and he got better and better and put up these spectacular years, then you go to the top of the list of places where players want to come to and coaches want to come to. So yes, it definitely is a benefit.
Going back to the transitionary time whenever Tyler did move in to become a starting quarterback, what let you know that was the right moment for Kellen to switch him over there?
Well, I think that's a question for Kellen. Yeah, no, I think as we've, what I think Tyler did an excellent job of is, Spencer earned the right to start coming out of training camp. That was first and foremost. I think everyone was aligned on that. Spencer earned the opportunity. I thought Spencer played some really good football early in the season. I think he gave us an opportunity. We didn't win games enough, but he gave us a lot of really good opportunities. And then Tyler just had a really good vision and plan to get better. And whether it was in the classroom, whether it was being the scout team quarterback, his preparation, he was always ready if the opportunity presented itself. And so I think it was certainly a healthy combination of feeling like, we can take another step, we can get better from an offense collectively. But I thought also Tyler, more importantly, felt like he'd taken some steps that he was ready to, have an opportunity to play. And, I thought he did some really good things. There were still some bumpy roads, like we played some games that were still hard early when he started, and he just kept staying steady, kept getting better, and I thought he grew as those opportunities presented themselves.
I think this might be
culminate into one moment, or was it a tribulation of a lot of things?
Yeah, he just got better. He just got better each week. I thought his ability to respond to some adverse situations, I think, was a really good indication of his ability to play football at a really high level in this league. And, when you throw an interception at Miami, you respond and play really good football in the second half and give yourself opportunities, and then respond again the next week, at Tampa, in really rainy, challenging conditions, and run the football for some big-time plays. He just did a really good job of getting better.
Maybe this is probably too soon for this, but Terry Fontenot, are you going to try and get him back? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't thought about anything like that. I'm disappointed for Terry. I thought he did some really good things there. I think, he built a really good roster, but, sometimes those things don't work out. Feel bad for Terry and his family. I think the world of Terry Fontenot. I think he's a fantastic, football administrator, and he'll land on his feet. He'll end up, whatever he ends up deciding to do, and wherever he goes, whatever team ends up with him, they're going to be lucky to have him.
And just going back to the Trevor Penning trade from the deadline, what do you kind of take as a lesson as an executive when that happens, just his development overall, trying him at multiple positions, drafting him, like, what do you kind of take from that as an executive?
Well, I think, listen, he's not the first player that we drafted that our vision for him didn't really fit what his skill set was ultimately. And the development timeline didn't fit. And so that happens sometimes. And you go back and you look at it, okay, what did we miss? I mean, we'll go through that. We've gone through that process. We'll go through it again. And look, I still think he has an opportunity to be a successful player in the league. It just didn't work out with us.
Mickey, how do you, what's your kind of take on your assets that we have this offseason? Another top 10 pick in the draft, maybe some more cap flexibility, like how do you feel about where that stuff lands?
Yeah, I mean, I feel good about that. I think we're going to have an opportunity to impact our team, and I'm excited about I'm excited about the draft class that's coming up. The discussions I've had with Jeff and his staff. There's a lot of players that will fit us at a lot of different positions, so I'm excited about that. I think the depth of this draft class right now looks pretty good, and I think we're going to be in a position to kind of take the best player that's available that can impact our team, as opposed to we have to have this position or that position. Obviously, there'll be positions that we prefer, but I don't think we're going to be in a position where, hey, we have to get, this particular position. So I'm excited about that.
Does that up the odds at all, the ever elusive possible trade back, if there is an have to go direction?
Yeah, it helps the odds, yes. It does.
Kellen, I know it's gonna take a thorough review before you have your list, your priority list, but is first quarter offense, start of game offense, I mean, do you already know that that's gonna be something that you have to do a deep dive on and figure out?
They'll certainly be on the checklist of items we just want to evaluate, and that's just collectively as a football team in all three phases, just starting faster. Obviously, we can see the numbers. We recognize the impact it had on some of these games, and we see a lot of the good football that we played in some of these other quarters, and if we can marry that up with the way we start, we'll be in a great position.
Mickey, do you get a sense of the optimism around town for this, even in a 6-win season, the optimism around town? It's, how do you process that? What do you feel about that? Do you pay attention to that at all?
Well, look, you can't. I'd probably be in a coma if I didn't recognize that there's optimism, and that's exciting. Look, I want our fans to feel optimistic and have a vision for, the same vision that we have for our team. So yes, I do feel it. I'm excited about that, just like I'm excited about our team. But I think one of the things that I do pretty well is tune out the noise. Tune out the noise when it's negative, and I think it's equally important to tune out the noise when it gets optimistic too. You have to find that balance, and I think that's one of the areas that I do a good job with.
Kellen, what did you make of the job that Phil Galliano did as special teams coordinator?
Yeah, I think we had a lot of moving pieces there, and so I thought credit to Phil of kind of helping navigate that. From a punter battle, that kind of went through all of training camp. We made a change at the kicker position midway through the season. Sheed obviously with the trade, halfway through the year, and so we did have a lot of moving pieces there. And so I thought I did a really good job of helping a lot of young players get ready and prepared to contribute on our football team in the special teams that we're a little bit new to that aspect of football. And so, are there areas that we want to improve on and get better? Absolutely. And that's certainly something we'll do in all three phases.
Kellen, how would you assess just your first season of just in-game as a head coach, that balance of calling plays offensively, but also trying to get a full view of what's going on in the game situations? How would you feel you did in this first season?
Yeah, like every area, there's going to be things that you're going to look back and want to improve on and get better and improve our process collectively as a football team and certainly as a staff. And so, I'm going to go through that whole process as well. I thought, calling plays and then managing the game management aspect of it. Obviously, you don't do that until you do it. And, So I feel like our process has gotten better, and we'll continue to try and improve that.
Did you feel like you had a comfort as the season, especially at the second half season, did you feel like you had more comfort doing that?
Yeah, I think just, we had more time together on that task. We had more conversations. We were more prepared to be proactive in some situations, and so certainly feel better.
Kellen, when you talk about special teams, like when a player like Jonas Sanker, who probably went into the season as a special teamer and then
Yep.
becomes a
Yep.
starter, how does that impact that special teams group?
Yeah, I think the injury factor, I think, is a big part of this. Our vision of Jonas was he's going to be a 4-core special teamer, and after 1 week, he's our starting safety, and he plays a ton of snaps there. And so, obviously, there was a next man up component of this, and so certainly some younger players that were able to contribute on special teams that maybe started on practice squad or started as kind of an inactive player that quickly became the key contributors there. I thought those guys got better as the season went on. They embraced those roles, and I'm excited for the growth opportunities that those guys have.
All the
Maybe the
different
projections
players
when
talked
it
about
comes-
how they had trust and love to playing at a Brandon Stadium. How much confidence and ease did it give you during your first year, having a coordinator who could take care of this type of ball for you?
Yeah, Brandon's done a phenomenal job for us. Obviously, my experience with him in the past, obviously, was a great resource, with our opportunity to team up together in Los Angeles for that 1 year. And so I thought Brandon did an excellent job of working with a staff that obviously, again, came from a number of different places, created an alignment, and then I thought the players and the coaches had a really good combination of buy-in and working really well together.
Mickey, the projections when it comes to the salary cap number for 2026 still show what would be an overage football in that area, but the amount is sort of light work as compared to what you've had to deal with in the past, and
Yeah.
what you've navigated in the past. Does that change at all? Not necessarily signings and things like that, but the restructure plans, things like that. Does that change at all sort of how you go about maneuvering around getting to
Yeah.
compliance?
Yeah, I think just the volume of things that we need to do is really what changes. Those numbers, when you look at them at the end of the season for any team, there's a lot of nuance behind all of it, because you just see a number. You don't see how many players are under contract, how many voids exist, how many of these, balloon numbers exist for the next year that you knew all along you weren't going to. That wasn't going to be their contract. So there's a lot of nuance to it, but obviously over the last 2 or 3 years, those things that we have to do to get under the cap have diminished, and this will be it'll be the lightest work that Kai has to do over the last couple of years. So that's a good feeling.
So you got to feel pretty good about that in the offseason.
Yeah, we're going to definitely feel good about that. And remember that COVID year, and that impact on our cap and every team's cap. That was a blow out of left field for us, and so we've had to overcome that, and it takes a while.
So kind of a two parts. I want both y'all's perspectives on it. For you, Mickey, like was Jalen Pope somebody that y'all were high on going into the draft? And,
Yeah.
And is that why you wanted to pursue him? And then for Kellen, like what's kind of your vision for him once he's
Yeah, we're definitely high on Jalen in that draft, and we talked about taking him at certain points, and so obviously New England took him, and the opportunity came up. They had changing staff there, and we had an opportunity to get him. We knew he's not going to be able to play this year, but just looking with our eye forward, we're really excited about him, and his rehab's gone well, and he's been great in the building, great in the room, and I'll let Kellen take it.
Yeah, again, I think just, echoing a lot of the same things. I think really good example of just Mickey and the crew being really proactive and recognizing an opportunity that, from a longevity standpoint, is going to give us, a guy that we all felt really good about. I was in Philly for 2 years ago, and he went through the draft process. Everyone felt really good about Jalen. Again, an example of, sometimes a change of scenery can be really beneficial for someone. He has been excellent this entire process. For our opportunity to kind of go through the rehab process with him here with our guys has been excellent. His work in the classroom where he can still be, around those guys has been awesome. And so I think it's going to provide him an opportunity to be just so much further ahead when he gets to the spring ball where, he's not going through that transition now. He's already gone through that process. And so obviously we feel like he's going to be able to play a really beneficial role for us.
I may be getting way ahead of myself here, I apologize. But with Drew expected to go into the Hall of Fame, is there a chance that you all would request to play in that game, knowing that it's an extra week and an extra preseason game? I don't know if that's good or bad or something that you would want to do.
Yeah, well, we've thought about that, obviously. And we don't want, I don't want to just assume that he's going to get in the Hall of Fame. But, yeah, I think that, I think it'd be a good thing for our team to experience that, and experience, that whole experience of the Hall of Fame is, I think it's really good for anyone involved in football and anyone who's a fan of football. And the fact that if Drew gets in, I think it'd be a great thing for us to play in that game.
Was that factoring to your guys' decision of whether to go away for camp or not?
Yeah, we'll talk through that whole process. I think that's obviously there's a lot of factors with that, going from what your regular season timeline looks like to certainly what your preseason schedule is going to look like, and so that's an off-season process we'll go through, and obviously we've had a lot of benefits of just the different opportunities we've had.
Maybe you brought Drew and Jari into this organization. Your thoughts on their candidacies for the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, they should be in there. Slam dunk. That's what I think.
Why though?
Oh, I mean, I just think when you look at their body of work over time, two of the most, I mean, obviously Drew. Do we even need to talk about Drew's candidacy? We shouldn't. But Jari, I mean, he was one of the most important elements on an offense that had historically, over that time frame, and you've written this, Jeff. It was unlike anything seen in the NFL in the history of the league. I mean, that period of time where I think we were number one in offense for 6 times maybe. The amount of points, the amount of yards, just the offensive output, and Jari was a huge part of that. And obviously, I think there's a disadvantage when you play in one of the smaller markets that isn't, no offense to any of you, a media hub. But I think Jari would already be in had he played for the Bears or the Giants or one of these big market teams. He'd already be in. That's what I think.
Do you think his role at guard in the way you all set up the offense around the 6-foot quarterback
Yeah.
is kind of overlooked a little bit?
Yeah, I do think it's overlooked, and the interior of the line, I think oftentimes gets overlooked in our league. The importance of the center and guards, and certainly with Drew, keeping that spot, 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage was important to protect that, and Jari and the guys that he played with over the years did a great job during that time frame, and again, Jari was a huge element of that. I think he should definitely be in the Hall of Fame.
Kellen, I know that Tyler was asked the other day, it's been a whirlwind since he got drafted, and he talked about he's staying here, and his wife's pregnant, and he talked about a checklist of things. I know you've talked about going from here to your house and kind of focused on this. Is there anything that you're kind of, your first chance in a few years to maybe sink into an off-season culturally too?
I've had a few transition off seasons, so I'm excited for this one. This is going to be build off of the previous year. We're excited to just be here and just get to experience the city, the community. Mardi Gras, Pelicans last night, going to that game with the kids, and so we just love that.
Kellen, what are the next steps for Tyler you want him to take? Is there anything that you kind of imparted to them?
Oh, there's plenty of steps. I think again, it's just growth. Just keep getting better, keep communicating at a high level, and so he'll put together, I'm sure, an excellent off-season plan to take advantage of the time that he has.
I'm curious about how you feel about the number of sacks you took. Is that kind of an area where you could get better in terms of sack avoidance?
Yeah, I think that's just a collective thing. I don't think that's necessarily, does Tyler want to get better? Absolutely. Can we get better from a protection standpoint, play calling standpoint? Obviously there's plenty of statistical things that we can look at and say, hey, let's get better here.
Maybe into the season, there were players that weren't available due to injury and things like that. Felt more related to timeline than anything else in terms of when they got injured. But with this year and coming off of how things were in 2024, where injuries were such a big impact, how did you feel about how that process went in terms of Ted Rath's job and the job that they did for the guys on the field?
Yeah, I think yeah, I think Ted and his staff did a great job. Our soft tissue injury rates were significantly impacted in a good way. Obviously, you don't want any injuries. Some of them were circumstantial, so I feel pretty good about where we're at. We're going to take a look at it again. The things that the injuries that happen, when they happen, how they happen. But I feel really good about that department.
With that being said, Kellen, would you approach training camp the same way as you did last year, with the workload based on how many injuries you had, or is that something that you have to evaluate for a while?
Yeah, I think you have to evaluate it. We have to go back all the way through our process for this last calendar year. Where can we get better? Where can we find more opportunities? There's always a balancing act in training camp. That's our best opportunity for physical practices, and so we do have to have them physical, be a little bit uncomfortable, push through some elements. That's why I like being here in the heat. Has some pros to that, but we got to get ready for a season, and those seasons are long, and we're expecting those seasons to be even longer moving forward. And so, that's a process that we'll just go through.
Mickey, for Cam Jordan to finish with 10.5 sacks after the last 2 years, what would you make of his season, and did you expect that type of rebound?
Well, nothing that Cam does surprises me. When you've been with someone for 15 years, nothing he does surprises me. His greatest quality is he just is always available. It's a miracle, on some level. But he's had lots of these years where he's actually produced in the second half of a season better than the early parts, and so. I'm not surprised, excited about it, excited for him, excited that he still has the same joy when he comes to work every day. He's always positive, he's always excited to be here, and man, that hasn't changed in 15 years. So, do we expect 10.5 sacks from him? No, I wouldn't say we expected that, but I'm excited for him.
And I just wanted to get your take on Alvin season 2. I know Kellen touched upon it earlier. I was just curious on your vantage point of it.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate he got hurt toward the end of the season. But Alvin's always prepared. He's always he's a talented guy. I don't see a lot of difference there. And I haven't had a conversation with Alvin since the season ended, so I'm excited to have that with him and see where he's at in his mind space. But Alvin's He's been such an important part of our team for the last 9 years, whatever it's been, and he's a talented player, and we have to give him the right opportunities, and we'll see how that goes going forward.
Kellen, when you win 4 of your last 5 games like this and have momentum in a number of ways, what's the biggest positive impact that can have on the coaching staff, on players returning, and all of that good stuff?
Yeah, I think it just leads into our off-season program. In 15 weeks, OTAs start, the phase 1. So it's like, for these guys, I think the optimism and the way we finish obviously provides some juice there. And then, it just puts these guys in a position for this off-season. These guys go away, they go do their own thing for a little bit, but it puts them in a position to have a really good plan to get better. And then before you know it, we'll be back together, getting better and taking advantage of that opportunity.
Mickey, the way you rate
Wrap it up with 1 or 2 more questions, please.
The way you rate about Jarvis Evans and his ability to help set up the offense for you have a taller quarterback now, but you have your tackle short up. How much is the interior of the offensive line going to be a priority?
Yeah, well, I think that the number one thing there is we've got to stay healthy. Eric McCoy is a really, really good player, but he's been injured the last few years, so we have to examine that. Hey, are we putting him in difficult positions? How can we correct that and not let that happen again? Caesar's a really good player, and yet we've got to get more out of him as well. Obviously, Dylan stepped in after Trevor, the Trevor trade. I thought he did a good job. So we'll evaluate that interior offensive line. But and I think, by the way, we had a number of guys step in. Luke came in and played for Eric and did a good job. But we're going to have to evaluate that position, and we've got some free agents there. So it's going to be an area that we pay a lot of attention to in this offseason.
Going back to the lighter, don't have to do as much work with the maneuvering, but the cap is Does that allow you to be aggressive if you want to be and, go on and spend?
Yeah, I mean, yes, it would, we got to be judicious. We can't just go out there and just start, throwing contracts around and doing things that we wouldn't ordinarily do, but we will have some different opportunities.
Thanks, Kellen.